I am your host, Bill Noble. Is Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy in trouble? Or are the people who are bearish MicroStrategy in trouble? We're going to go over both sides of the argument. We're also going to discuss the insidious nature of this attack on Mike and his company, and indirectly on Bitcoin. These guys are after him. They don't want competition for the Bitcoin ETF because, after all, what MicroStrategy is a giant Bitcoin treasury company or digital asset treasury company, also called a DAT, right? They don't want MicroStrategy in major indexes, right? They're threatening him with, having to experience automatic billions of dollars in selling of his stock just because. In other words, good morning, everybody. Legacy just decided to attack Bitcoin by attacking Michael Saylor's company, threatening him with automatic liquidation, right, of his stocks out of major funds and indexes, crushing him, crushing Bitcoin, hurting the spokesman. JPMorgan is involved. Everybody's favorite group of, lizard people. JPMorgan Research is writing things about MicroStrategy, telling people what I'm telling you, that it would be terrible for MicroStrategy if this group MSCI removes MicroStrategy from these stock indexes, right? Which is followed by a counter FUD storm against JPMorgan. Crypto people closing their accounts, accusations that JPMorgan has some huge short position in MicroStrategy, which I don't think is true, but we can talk about what might be true through the derivatives market. And then, of course, if that doesn't make any sense to you, don't worry, it will by the time we're done, so don't go anywhere. And make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the like button because that helps me help you. But we can also have a conversation of what this kind of fear-mongering, oh my God, it even goes down to the law enforcement issues about the files, about, possibly that individual was funding Bitcoin research indirectly. Whatever. This reminds me of the 40% corrections we would have in 2017 when they would come out and say, we're outlawing Bitcoin mining. We're getting rid of this. Everyone's got to leave China. There were two of these things that created 40% corrections. The fear was unbelievable, and it was all BS. This is geopolitical, financial, and we're going to go over it from top to bottom. But I'm telling you what, at the end of the day, this doesn't end a cycle. I don't think this ends a cycle, even though I'm not happy with this thing and a weekly close below 90K. You don't end a cycle because someone attacks Bitcoin because they're afraid of it. This is very simple. It's like World Wrestling Federation tag team. Okay, on one side, you have the Orange Man, Scott Bessent, and Bitcoin. Right? The Orange Man and Bessent want money creation and effectively interest rates handled by the Treasury and not the Fed. That's it. And they want Bitcoin as a strategic asset and crypto in general to thrive because stable coins help the government fund themselves. So on one hand, Orange Man, Treasury Secretary, the Treasury as the leader in money creation, Bitcoin, and crypto. On the other side, you have the Fed, right? Screw Up Incorporated, backed by Jamie Dimon and JPMorgan. What's the difference between JPMorgan and the Fed? Nothing. They wear better suits at JPMorgan. The Fed doesn't work for the American people. The Fed works for JPMorgan. And JPMorgan doesn't like stablecoins, and they don't like Bitcoin. You didn't know that until recently. Right? They're afraid. That's it. This is like a Rocky movie, right? Rocky takes the pounding, we take the pounding, we take the pounding, and then all it takes is one shot, which could be a MicroStrategy short squeeze, you don't know. All it takes is one shot somewhere to cut the proverbial Ivan Drago Bitcoin haters, cut them right over the eye, and this whole thing turns around. I refuse to bail out on Bitcoin because of FUD from legacy. Blank me, just carry me out, right? Because again, this is just like every other 40% correction based on fake fear. Fake fear. And of course, you know it's fake fear because they're attacking the Bitcoin spokesman. And I'll bet you $1 BlackRock is involved because everybody thinks in crypto, yeah, BlackRock bought some Bitcoin. BlackRock has got to be one of the most nefarious organizations in human history. Okay? So if they don't want digital asset treasury companies like Tom Lee's company competing with the Ethereum ETF, they're going to make phone calls and you're going to have the kind of mess that we have right now. So Patreon Platinum, okay, YouTube member area, latest podcast is out for everybody on TikTok. You know, the bio for Patreon is in the bio. Everybody else, it's in the link down below, right? Eagle King puts it in the comments. We are publishing epically crypto stocks to sell because this affects all the crypto stocks. But with that said, now let's move on to this story. Out of nowhere, strangely, on the same day as like the Binance related crash, which I understand was triggered by a huge spot order, that same day, a group called MSCI, right, which, you know, does business with Wall Street. Wall Street is their customers, came out with something that said basically MicroStrategy and digital asset treasury companies, they're not companies, they're hedge funds. And if you've got more than 50% of your assets in crypto, then you're getting kicked out of their stock indexes. Now, why is that a big deal? Well, because mutual funds and a lot of things in equities work on an automated basis. So a mutual fund will follow the MSCI, 1,000 stock index, right? And the mutual fund automatically buys whatever is in that index and automatically sells anything that's kicked out of the index. So whoever's running MSCI just decides arbitrarily, seemingly, with a very huge lack of curiosity in the market, just wakes up one day and goes, you know what? I hate these digital asset treasury companies. I hate MicroStrategy. Done. Out. We're going to decide on January 16th. So we're going to hold it over your head for 2 months and make you even more upset. Now, this guy just woke up and is like, hey, I'm going to have scrambled eggs and toast and pick on Michael Saylor. No, of course not. Okay. BlackRock and probably Jamie Dimon and most likely Goldman and Morgan Stanley called up this dude. They all run in the same circles. Can't say too much more than that. And they were like, you know what? Take this guy down. It's interfering with ETFs. Bitcoin is going to decentralize the whole universe. We don't have control over it. Bessent has let the horse out of the barn with stable coins. So not only is Bitcoin going to be the alternative currency, which we don't control, the Treasury is about to take control from our sugar mama, aka the Fed. So they call up MSCI and go, you know what? Attack these guys. Attack them. Crushing MicroStrategy stock. It's as simple as that. It's like a gigantic FUD storm. Now, that triggers selling in Bitcoin because when MicroStrategy got crushed, big funds that were long Bitcoin, short MicroStrategy, they had profits to take. Hey, look at this. Michael Saylor's stock was like really expensive compared to the Bitcoin that it owns. And now, the teeter-totter has balanced itself with MicroStrategy coming way down. All right. So MicroStrategy comes down. They cover their shorts, or have they? We'll go into that. Those don't go anywhere. But they don't need the Bitcoin anymore, so they dump it. Long Bitcoin, short MicroStrategy. When the trade's over, they dump the Bitcoin. And that's why this thing is down only. On top of them picking on MicroStrategy, and there's probably an issue with this law enforcement thing about Bitcoin's image. I don't know. I don't know about that, but I do know that Wall Street is making a concerted effort to hurt Bitcoin, and it's working because it's down only. Now, on to JPMorgan and Jamie and his nonsense, right? So his research department, way late in the game, right? The research department wasn't bearish MicroStrategy when it was $500 a share, right? At $500, it was great. But at $170, we have to get negative and say it's going to 37. Because, oh my God, he's going to get kicked out of the index. And he might. And he might. Right? And people think that's going to trigger selling of Bitcoin. And I got to be honest with you, you know, when you watch Michael Saylor do interviews, he's looking a little pale these days, honestly. Now, the report in Patreon has crypto equities that we like, crypto equities that we don't like. There's a broader report that says, you know, a company like Michael Saylor could go merge with another company and stay in the index. I'm not telling you what company it is. It was fascinating, even if it was far-fetched. You could have a mergers and acquisition raging combination of companies to try to comply with this MSCI thing. Michael Saylor is not going to take this lying down. And of course, it stands to reason that everyone is now down on JPMorgan because everyone is hip to the fact that these guys don't want Bitcoin. I actually would argue it's BlackRock, but somebody has started a rumor, which is ridiculous, that JPMorgan personally has a huge short position, and that if MicroStrategy goes up, you know, they'll be kaput. Now, let's talk about that for a second. First of all, banks don't have proprietary trading like they used to in 2008. You can day trade, you know, market makers can do stuff like that, but, you know, they can't wake up and say, oh, yeah, you know, we're just going to short MicroStrategy. Not so. Okay, so that brings up two more points. One, MicroStrategy could become a meme stock like GameStop. Now, it's not going to go up like GameStop because that had an irresponsible short position by some large institution. You know, that was a complete anomaly. Right now, MicroStrategy does not have that problem. There's a lot of people short the stock, but it's not GameStop. Now, that said, it is kind of funny that everybody was long Bitcoin and short MicroStrategy. Bitcoin went straight down, but so did MicroStrategy. I don't see a lot of people covering shorts in MicroStrategy. So how did they put the bearish position on? Did they short the stock? Well, okay, no. If you didn't short the stock, what are your other choices? Oh, could it be the derivatives market? Uh-oh. Is somebody in the derivatives market positioned bearish MicroStrategy so that if it actually started to squeeze, you'd have a problem with like a derivatives desk inside of a big bank, maybe? Nothing like an invisible derivatives blow up to get you up early in the morning. That could happen if they turn it into a meme stock, because, you know, you may have huge bets on MicroStrategy going down that may not be true. Now, that's going to require a Bitcoin rally. And at the end of the day, I think this JPMorgan, you know, they FUD MicroStrategy. Crypto turns around and FUDs them. This could all be a distraction because I think JPMorgan and possibly Bitcoin are going to get named in this, you know, file when it gets released. Again, are you going to capitulate because the biggest players in equities, they're afraid of digital asset treasury companies. They're afraid of crypto expanding outside their control, which has already happened. They've been pretending that they've got control via the ETFs, and now the crypto monster has gotten loose, and they don't like it. They don't. We talked about this yesterday on the YouTube member podcast, and as soon as I clearly understood that this is like an old-fashioned China mining FUD storm, I'm like, all right, well, maybe it can go to 60, but I'm not puking it just below my stop loss level. I'm going to give it at least one more week, because with this kind of fear and this kind of FUD coming from legacy, if that unwinds itself, in other words, crypto Twitter actually has the right idea. In other words, if you're bearish Bitcoin, or all these funds that have liquidated Bitcoin and gone home for the year, they don't have Bitcoin exposure anymore. Somebody could be short MicroStrategy through the derivatives market. So I can see this thing turning around very quickly, even though right this second, it's down only, because that's what they want to happen. They want you out. They want to discredit Bitcoin. That's not going to work. That's not going to work at all. If anything, they're going to cause this thing to spread out, because people are going to want to diversify their Bitcoin holdings by going to Dash, our number 3 rated privacy coin on the dip. To find out what other privacy coins we like, make sure you check out the latest YouTube member podcast. They're going to create 3 or 4 monsters: Dash, Zcash, Bitcoin Cash, and either Monero and possibly even Litecoin. They're going to go after the Bitcoin forks if there's any problem with Bitcoin. And frankly, if Bitcoin holds the levels that we have for our Patreon Platinum group, and again, we have 13 instruments, right? Where do you want to buy this thing? Okay, well, I'll give you a hint. You don't want to be selling it at 86. If anything, a leap over 86, well, I mean, I'm going too far. You have to go check that out. Needless to say, legacy versus crypto is on. Right now, it's advantage legacy until it turns. Now, what could turn it? Well, how about the Fed with egg all over their face? Goldman is predicting that they got to cut in December and they got to cut in March. And Goldman doesn't predict these things. They do and they don't. Like, they have lunch with the people who make these decisions at the Fed. Like I said, it's all one entity. So through Goldman, the Fed has already signaled that they need to cut. It's either the unemployment data or Black Friday sales. Toby thinks Black Friday sales are going to be okay. Somewhere out there, there's a problem. In other words, what's everyone's problem with Bitcoin? You guys got some issues over there? Maybe you got some issues with gold and silver? I mean, I'm looking at a headline right now from Zero Hedge. Fed needs to cut, and Bitcoin will be the first to sniff out the coming Fed give up, where they give up and either have to talk super dovish or cut for, I don't know, any one of 6 reasons. They're all afraid of Bitcoin. Meanwhile, in equities, you have fear beyond belief. There is no reason that futures should be higher, according to Jim Cramer. This is the curse of the bulls. Fake optimism based on Fed versus fear. Equities up only, with fear greed at 0, with them at all-time highs. It's mind-boggling. Everyone expecting equities to go down and catch up with crypto. I would submit to you that crypto could snap higher and catch up with equities. You know, I know that sounds crazy, and I know crypto can't even bounce. So there's not a whole lot of justification for it, other than the fact that the charts in many ways are so stretched out that it either is the end of the cycle, or you're going to have an awakening where this is like every other 40% FUD correction in the history of Bitcoin. Except it's done by people who are obviously afraid of what it and the entire crypto ecosystem can do. This is a concerted effort, right? Like MSCI, their customer base is Wall Street. Their customers call up MSCI and say, FUD Bitcoin. FUD Michael Saylor. Make him not sleep at night. Ruin his Thanksgiving. Ruin his Christmas. Why do you think they're dragging it out until January 16th? They're just going to torture the guy. And the thing that's ironic is if MicroStrategy actually did go down, like if there wasn't a meme squeeze, if it did go down and MicroStrategy was worth exactly the amount of Bitcoin that it held, that could stop all these hedge fund gymnastics, long Bitcoin, short MicroStrategy, blah, blah, blah. That could just bring everything back into balance. And then Bitcoin's off to the races because there's no excuse to sell Bitcoin at that point. And everyone else has sold it. So everyone who's going to tell you that Michael Saylor stock actually going down is a problem, it really isn't. It isn't. It's just going to reveal, okay, well, you know, they picked on the stock and the stock went down. And now what? Now what? Are we as crypto people going to sit here and say Jamie Dimon has ended the cycle? That's what we're saying, right? Regardless of what kind of position they have. I would imagine their derivatives desk may have acted as a market maker for some huge short position. Somebody may have a short position through the derivatives market, and JPMorgan's derivatives desk, is exposed if that trade goes wrong. Let's put it that way. They may have to market buy massive amounts of MicroStrategy. That I can see. The bank does not have a short position. That's just crypto trying to punch back at Ivan Drago. We're not ending the cycle because of Jamie Dimon and Larry Fink. We're not, right? If those guys win, then we're toast. But if you've ever read anything about Bitcoin or you understand crypto at all, you know they're acting like this because they're afraid, right? They're afraid. And you create what you're afraid of. You do. And that's what's going to happen. I mean, there is, according to my work, there's a 50% chance of the status quo. So there's a 50% chance that this does not wind up a disaster or a huge move either way in MicroStrategy or Bitcoin. There's a 30% chance of this just of MSCI kicking out Michael Saylor's company and having that be a mess. With a target in MicroStrategy of $37. That's 30% chance of that is a high number, right? And there's a 20% chance that they can do a GameStop and squeeze MicroStrategy. The catalyst for such a move would probably be Bitcoin having to reclaim 100. So, of course, that means they're going to defend, meaning, the bears will be up at 100, just like I think the bulls, like Novogratz, are down there below 80. Right? So you got this 20K range where all the big players are going to fight it out. And this fight, if you don't think this matters, you should think again. Because it explains why Bitcoin is down only. Because they're just leaning on it. And the way they've set this up, it is a perfect legacy attack. Perfect legacy attack. Right? Because they've pinned Michael Saylor into a corner. People have they're looking at the Bitcoin price action and thinking that there's something wrong with Bitcoin and they have to give up. You don't have to give up. I watched a podcast where some guy says, central bankers walk around like they're intoxicated. They're drunk. They're just printing money. They don't have a grip on inflation. There's no growth in the labor market. Foreclosures are up are at 32%. 32%, right? Foreclosure rates surge 32% year over year, according to Polymarket. This is happening, and this impacts banks. And yeah, this is what Bitcoin was created for. Drunk central bankers printing money, deficits that are just insane, multiple government shutdowns. This is what Bitcoin is for. But of course, They have literally taken your brain and going, it's like they've compressed it so you can't see what Bitcoin and ETH and Solana and the whole ecosystem, right? I'm convinced Jamie Dimon does not want a Ripple IPO. I think the banking system is just as scared of XRP and all these ISO 20022 coins. I'm telling you, we have a list of sleeper cryptos. Came out of one of our reports, right? So we have all these levels and all this stuff, where we want to buy, where we want to sell, where's the big reclaim. But all of the cryptos that are sleepers, right? Algorand, Hedera, Cardano. Somebody asked Toby if you should give up on Cardano. Toby said no, not knowing that Cardano was in our sleeper report. Now, what is Cardano good for? I don't know. I do know this. This MSCI debacle with Michael Saylor and how they're just trying to scare this guy as if he needs to be any more scared with the price action. This is going to cement that we need a decentralized financial future and we need a decentralized AI future. Okay. There's a group called Stop AI. Okay. Someone left Stop AI and, let's just say he's talking about being kind of aggressive in the world and freaking people out. So if you don't think we need decentralized AI, you're crazy. And we've been publishing on this, the whole YouTube member podcast. We're always revising the portfolio, anything DePin, anything cloud, right? All the small coins that Toby has picked, we organize this week into groupings, portfolios, and then a very simple portfolio that you can implement. Giving up on decentralized AI and altcoins, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? SUI at $1 something, really? I mean, these things are all going on underneath, Jamie's circus or the geopolitical circus or whatever is in these files. Right? These FUD storms have never worked. They have never worked. And this is the biggest FUD storm ever because it's not the Chinese government. It's us. It's essentially Jamie versus Donald or Jamie and Jay Powell versus the Orange Man, Michael Saylor, and Bessent, a hedge fund manager. And the Fed and Jamie have screwed up to such a degree that if there's a problem with JPMorgan, the crypto people are trying to start a run on the bank, if I can even say that, because if they're named as an enabler in this law enforcement issue, you could have a serious problem with them. They're called the safe bank, right? When Silicon Valley Bank and all these banks fail, everyone goes and puts their money in JPMorgan. Okay. You boys got a little bit of a problem? Why do you boys need a Bitcoin distraction? Why are you picking on Michael Saylor? Huh? Why? Well, maybe because you got your own problem. You guys got all the gold you're supposed to have in your vault? Okay. You guys are picking on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not going to trade well until there's an upside catalyst, which again could be the Fed, and Thanksgiving looms. Now let's talk about Thanksgiving. So on American holidays, as I have brought up on multiple streams, you can have huge moves. So, I had 90 as a stop loss level. I moved it to 74, always a dangerous, undisciplined thing. So if 90 was your stop, 90 was your stop. And I know a guy who stopped out at 90, and he's one of the smartest people that I know. And that's fine. Okay. Philosophically, I'm not giving up because of Wall Street fudding Michael Saylor's stock. Because actually, again, as I said, the stock going down would be a good thing, but who knows what they can do over Thanksgiving. Now, here's what I would love. If I can pour myself a cup of Kool-Aid. Wouldn't it be fantastic if there was some kind of news over the weekend and while stock markets were closed or stock markets had half days, Bitcoin moved when MicroStrategy was closed? In other words, on Thanksgiving Day, when MicroStrategy is not trading, I think Bitcoin could move 10% either way. Either people are going to give up on it and the legacy is going to come in and try to crush it, or they're going to get squeezed. They're going to realize when the stock market is closed and we're not dealing with, I don't know, fear of the AI bubble. It's like 6 articles this morning on Zero Hedge about fear and the AI bubble in equities. When they're writing it's a bubble, it's not a bubble. But when we don't have the bubble talk and we don't have the equity market FUD, I'm really interested to see what crypto does on Thanksgiving Day in the United States. I mean, I don't know. Bitcoin's going to go to 74.60, 74.60, 94, or 114. That's the distribution for Thanksgiving Day. I just cannot believe that nothing is going to happen, because while the legacy guys, think that they fudded it and the price action is terrible and they just kind of walk away. Yeah, while the cat is away, the crypto mice can play. And, Toby weighed in on this. Like, you should really watch the entire YouTube member podcast, but if you subscribe and you listen to the first 5 minutes, you'd be all set. You'd be all set. Because I'm not getting out because Jamie is afraid of Scott Bessent. Scott Bessent is sitting on $1 trillion. And even if they shut the government down again in January, again, he's got the advantage because they're afraid. They are afraid. And, like I said, if someone like Michael Saylor comes out of this, okay, somehow, even if he's got to do a merger or a leverage buyout, watch out on the upside in MicroStrategy. Now, again, crypto Twitter trying to get something going, trying to get the GameStop, like Wall Street Bets was doing was retweeting everything. Somebody is short MicroStrategy in the derivatives market. That's my opinion. Nobody would actually have a huge short position in the stock, particularly after GameStop. It's nowhere near as bad, but nobody wants to be short a stock that everyone else is short. They're going to do it via the derivatives market and transfer the risk of a squeeze to the market makers that sell them the products. And who sells the derivatives products and then has to manage the hedging of whatever they do? Banks. So JPMorgan or one of these players could have derivative exposure if there was a huge gap move up in Bitcoin or a huge gap move up in MicroStrategy. So if you're looking at this thing, my friend said over the weekend that Bitcoin was like it was like a corpse floating up to the surface. That's about what you got when you got like 2 green days in Bitcoin. So yeah, I get it. It trades terrible. Then again, you can see bubbling underneath the surface that it wants to go up. Like Bitcoin is down, but ETH is up today. XRP, laughably, even though, I put this like bearish thumbnail out to get everybody's attention. XRP, fast money, a part of the fast money trade that no matter what they say, BlackRock and Jamie are scared of, up almost 2%. Up almost 2%. Bitcoin Cash, getting perky. There are altcoins. Pendle, a DeFi project, is moving. I read something over the weekend that, 1inch, which is backed by Galaxy Digital, is going to solve a problem in DeFi called impermanent loss and open up DeFi massively. Trust, proof of anything, spiked. A huge fan of Toby. So if you think that I'm going to go running for the hills, Bitcoin goes to 80, 81, bounces to 86, and then it dips 0.5%. If you think I'm going to be like, oh my God, I need to get out, I need to run away. No. I worked at Wall Street for 20 years, right? I know what these guys are capable of. And I know how they act when they attack. These banks don't do anything unless they can dominate. They don't. And if they can't dominate, well, you know what? They're going to push back. They're going to call up the guy from MSCI and say, hi, we're your customers. Get rid of Michael Saylor. Get rid of this guy. Or we're going to wake up one day because they know about the problems in the banking system. They know about the Fed screwing up. You don't think they know? They have a front row seat. They know way more than we do. Trust me, Jamie knows. He knows everything. Either they can't control inflation, or there's stagflation, or they have multiple failed bank, whatever. They know that the case for Bitcoin is unbelievable and a case for all of crypto. So FUD it until everyone quits. FUD it until you change your mind, until the price action is changing VanEck's mind. They're like, oh, wow, we just discovered that Bitcoin has no privacy and blah, 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 blah. We might get out. Oh, my God. Bitcoin doesn't have privacy, but Bitcoin is collateral. You're not going to use Bitcoin as a transactional currency. You're going to use Dash, Bitcoin Cash, Zcash for that. What you're going to use Bitcoin for is collateral to get fiat, right? It's going to be an engine to keep up with any inflation or any central bank nonsense. It's collateral. That's another reason why they're scared, because, God forbid the Treasury, it's called a bit bond. If they ever issue a Treasury bond that incorporates Bitcoin, forget about it. And someone's going to figure that out. And then you're really not going to need banks. You're not. So long Bitcoin, short the banks. That is a very old saying, and I refuse to get out. And if I'm an idiot, and I have to eat, either like I can have a bowl of rice and then a turkey leg made out of rice, shaped out of sticky rice. If that's what I got to eat, then that's what I got to eat. There's no way I'm capitulating to Wall Street. I'm not. And the new levels and the new dip buying levels are in Patreon Platinum. And frankly, that stuff's flying off the shelf, along with the analysis of which crypto stocks we like. Because, some crypto stocks have been absolutely hammered. Absolutely hammered. Like first they were parabolic, and then most of them got destroyed. And there's still like 3 destroyed stocks that we want to buy, or that our model likes. Let's put it that way. Okay, MJ Hicks in the house. Welcome. Warmon is here. Let's go XRP. Art from the airport. Machine is here. Alpha Video, a member. Welcome. Odd Dark. Supermat. Why do I get this feeling that everybody had to change their name? I see a lot of ats on here. We have at Cepedas, Crypto Crazy, Smash Satoshi. Okay, risk reward is broken. Best to be on the sidelines. It's easier to eat gold than crypto. Well, dude, I can't argue with the guy, right? I mean, Bitcoin could go from 86 to 75 or 86 to 60, and there's going to be sellers at 100, and Michael Saylor's average price for the year at 114. So, you have huge downside and no upside, according to some common sense based analysis. Or you have a generic 40% correction in Bitcoin, which when everybody says it's over and it's not, I don't know what the catalyst is yet. I just know that when everyone thinks it's over, which, could happen soon, it's not. It isn't. We'll see. Hal Lopez from Portugal. What's going on? Rave Song Records. Crypto Billy in the house. Make sure you follow Crypto Billy on Twitter and YouTube. The guy's a posting machine. Soul Strategies came out and said this doesn't affect them as they don't see themselves as a DAT. Also, Soul ETF continues influence. Are you bullish Solana? Yes, because the guy from Multicoin Capital, Kyle Samani, I think I met him across a room once. They have a strategy for Solana. Solana has a yield. A DAT is a company based on how you run it. If you're an ice cream company or a medical device company and you just borrow a bunch of money and buy Bitcoin and sit there, you may not be a company. But there is a huge argument that these companies are companies. Like maybe they're just protecting themselves against a decline in the value of the dollar. It'd be funny if they handled this in the Clarity Act. Megan is here. What's up? Megan, what's going on? Proof of Truth. Sam Storm, what's going on? SJ747. You don't buy the wrong token. You just sell the right token at the wrong time. That is probably true. Like, why are we selling? Why are we bearish? Why? Because JPMorgan and BlackRock say so? Because Goldman called up MSCI? Goldman Sachs Asset Management has a gigantic long position in MicroStrategy that can take that stock and turn around and lend it out for short sellers. So, yes, it's good that they're long, unless they're loaning it out to have people pile on the short side of the trade. I know, it's crazy. They don't like what they can't control, right? The Fed can go away, according to one person. Chatter Rich, by the way, we want to welcome everybody on TikTok. TikTok, you should feel free to follow the channel and blow up my statistics. Anything you can do, I would be appreciated. Blown Ideas says, love you. I'm with you until the wheels fall off. Bull Runner is in the house. Rotor Udedge, good morning. And Odd Dark 3, a member, is out there with the Toby Ward and Get to the Chopper pilot Bill Noble. Yeah, we should have got to the chopper at 107. The problem with that, unless it's like an FTX, is that once you get out, you don't know when you can get back in. Like, you know, would you, if you got out at 107, would you get back in at 80? Would you be talking yourself into it's going to 75, which is Michael Saylor's average price? That's why I'm inclined to stay in Bitcoin. And if anything, I used our model to buy the dip. The model caught the low in Dash, Zcash, and Zcash, and I FOMO'd into Bitcoin Cash because I can't control myself. I just got to have it. Because I think even if Bitcoin slumps, these other forms of Bitcoin can take off. And it's very simple, right? Guys in the trenches don't want to buy it, and everybody may be long the wrong type of Bitcoin. People may just say, oh, well, I like these other types better, right? They want to pick on Michael Saylor. They want to pick on the Treasury companies. It's not going to work because you got other choices. Not to mention the fact that, you know, Kyle Samani is going to run an epic Solana Treasury companies. I think Tom Lee is going to do a bang up job, and BlackRock's not happy about that because that's competition for the Bitcoin ETF. He's essentially an active fund manager in Ethereum. That scares them. They don't have that. They don't have that. They're freaking out. Yeah, there isn't a lot of nonsense in a lot of these stocks, but they've all gotten wiped out. What's left to do? What's left? Where are we taking MicroStrategy? 30? 0? Felix says, I'm giving you anxiety. No, man, I'm not. If you want a relief for your anxiety, you got to listen to Toby. What I'm telling you is, yes, there are risks. Yes, they're picking on Michael Saylor. And yes, it's scary. You got to remember something. When the Chinese would come out and say we're outlawing Bitcoin mining, all of the Bitcoin mining at that time was in China. All of the major players were in China. So the Chinese had the power to shut the Bitcoin network, to shut it down, basically. Not all the way down, but you know, they could take, I don't know, a huge chunk of the hash rate offline. So every time the Chinese would say, we're taking this down, that was a huge problem. Now all we're talking about is, okay, well, we're going to FUD one guy who may have to sell some Bitcoin or liquidate some of the smaller DATs. That's not shutting down the network or disrupting the network. That's just fear, right? In other words, if explaining the situation creates fear, that's what they want. But you need to understand, again, it's Wall Street manufactured fear about Bitcoin into what our models think is a good BTFD level, right? If everyone stops out at 90 and it hangs out just below 90, if you can get a reclaim over Thanksgiving, I think there's a lot of upside. Matter of fact, our model says so. So one person saying risk reward is terrible. Our model says differently. And naturally, you need to be in Patreon Platinum in order to see all that. All right, people, that is the market update for today. We will see you tomorrow.